My mum is mad because she didn't go to my kid's soccer game. My kiddo, who's 6, started soccer about a month ago. Practice is on Tuesdays and then games are every Saturday. I group chatted my family and my husband's family a picture of the layout of the fields and the game schedule. I told them in advance that if something would change, we would let them know, but anyone is welcome to come. I'm pretty close to my mum as my dad died when I was a baby. She's very hands-on with my 3 kiddos, but favours my oldest as he's the first grandkid to her. This past Saturday, my brother decided to come to the game. I spoke to him the previous day and he was the one who brought up going. When I spoke to my mum about her weekend plans, she said that she wanted to tend to her garden and it was her weekend off. No mention of the game, and I didn't mention it as I was busy trying to manage all of the kids after work and getting dinner started. Well, apparently, when I was feeding the kids lunch before the game, I missed her call. I just didn't check my phone. I lose it frequently as I have ADHD and 3 kids who constantly need help with things. I get to the game a few minutes late and meet up with my brother. He's helping my kids with something when my phone starts ringing and he answers it. It's my mum screaming at him to put me on. I ask her what's up and she accuses me of not inviting her or letting her know the schedule. She said that it's my fault that she didn't come because I didn't answer the phone call in which she was going to ask the time of the game. I apologized about missing the call, but go into detail on how we were running behind, but she didn't care and just started screaming at me. Then she goes, "You can tell your child that it's your fault that I didn't go," and hung up on me. A few hours later, I tried texting her to explain that I was sorry that I missed her call and that there are plenty of other games on in the future. I said that I did send the schedule out to everyone else, but I got no response. She told my brother that I did it on purpose because I didn't want her going. Honestly, I don't even know how to proceed. We haven't talked since the call and I've already apologized for missing her call, but really, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. She tends to get mad at us frequently and it's very stressful for me as I have a newborn, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. Life is hard right now and I'm struggling with everything. My parents are demanding that I let them stay with me on their next trip. I'm in my mid-20s and live in a different state to my parents. Boundaries are a foreign concept for both of them, and they've always viewed me as an extension of them rather than my own person. My parents plan on visiting the state I live in next month and are demanding to stay with me. They didn't even ask if they could stay, they told me that they're staying with me and refused to accept otherwise. I'm a medical student currently living in a tiny studio apartment. I don't have room for anyone to stay with me, nor do I want anyone staying here. My course load is overwhelming and I need a quiet place to study. I work part-time and pay for everything myself. Despite them being self-made multi-millionaires, they have refused to help me financially since I moved out at 18. That in itself was a nightmare ordeal filled with years of guilt trips, emotional blackmail, the works. I live in one of the most expensive cities in the world, in a country where the cost of living is at a crisis point. I struggle to pay for essentials every week. Nonetheless, my parents feel entitled to stay with me for free because they raised me. I put that in quotation marks because they were neglectful and largely absent throughout my childhood. I had to essentially raise myself from the age of 12 onwards, while also being heavily parentified and forced to fulfill the role of a spouse to my father. I had to grow up very fast and my relationship with my parents is damaged as a result of not only this, but also the extensive abuse they inflicted upon my siblings and me. I've told them that I can't have them stay with me, but they won't have it. I'm worried that they're going to turn up with their luggage and force themselves into my home. I don't want to have to call the police on them if they do turn up, but I can't have them stay here. I'm kind of lost, so what should I do? An entitled mum keeps telling her kid to take my things. Today was my first time visiting Crumble Cookies. I bought 4 huge cookies to try and share with my friends. On my way home, I decided to enjoy the cookie that I'd gotten for myself. I was sitting at one of the little picnic tables where my condo is, and who would show up? But of course, my neighbour's friend who is an entitled parent. Just a little side note, this is not the first time that I've encountered her. The last time I encountered this woman, I had 2 candy canes because my blood sugar was low, and I was on my way to a doctor's appointment. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I obviously did not give the child one of my candy canes. At the time, I needed it as life-saving medication. So I'm looking at my phone and eating my cookie, basically doing as many errands on my phone as I can, when suddenly I hear this entitled parent open her mouth. She says to her daughter, "Look at that, Olivia, there's 3 giant cookies in there," while the entitled mum is pointing to my box of cookies. She goes on to say, "Why don't you go ahead and pick out a cookie you like? As we all know, it's very important to learn how to share with others. And this lady didn't share with you the last time we saw her, and maybe she's learned her lesson." As I look up, this entitled mother is folding her arms and giving me the most smug look ever. Her kid comes running up to grab a cookie out of my box, but I'm faster. I immediately close the cookie box and the little girl seems shocked. The entitled mother lets out the most obnoxious grunt and says, "Oh, come on, you don't need all of those cookies, and you didn't even share with her last time you saw her. I'm trying to teach her manners and sharing. We share when we have more than we need." I look at the little girl, ignoring the mother, and say to her, "Today I'm going to teach you another very important lesson. Can you listen carefully?" The little girl nods, and I told her, "You should never take food from a stranger. You should only take food from people you know. Because for all I know, there could be something that you're allergic to in these cookies that might make you very sick. I don't want to accidentally give you something that might make you sick. You don't want that either, right?" The little girl nods and I smile at her. I say, "Also, another thing to learn in life is sometimes we can't always get what we want. So you might want one of my cookies, but for all you know, I have other people that I'm going to share them with. And then they'll be sad that they didn't get a cookie. We should always ask before taking things from someone else." I tell her that I'd be happy to share a piece of my candy with her if she asked me nicely the next time I see her, as long as her mother can confirm that there's nothing in it that might make her have an allergic reaction. The little girl smiles at me, says okay, and thanks me. The look on the entitled mum's face was priceless. I think she probably would have slapped me upside the head, but I was using my wheelchair at the time because my dysautonomia is really acting up today. I don't know why, but it looks especially bad if you hit somebody using a wheelchair. Even more so if you do it in front of a large group of people, which on this day, there were plenty of people out enjoying the nice weather. I got enough satisfaction in not only teaching that kid a lesson that she needed to learn, but then just by watching the entitled mother storm off and drag her daughter back into one of the surrounding buildings. And honestly, I wasn't even lying. I did get the cookies to share with my brother and friends. Perhaps if they had asked me nicely, I wouldn't have minded sharing the one giant cookie that I had bought for myself. But both of the times that I've encountered this entitled mother, she has just told her kid to take something from me without asking. That poor kid is going to grow up on the wrong path if she thinks that she can get away with that. However, if this kid does happen to ask me nicely the next time I see her, I will follow through with my promise. I usually do have low blood sugar candy to spare on me, and if she does ask nicely, I'll give her one of my little bags of Skittles. Seriously, these entitled parents are crazy. I'm glad this woman doesn't live here, as I don't want to have to encounter her more than every once in a while. She is the opposite of Mary Poppins, practically unpleasant in every possible way. My mum wants my location. I'm 21 and still live with my parents because they're Muslim and don't allow girls to move out until they get married. Don't worry, I plan on moving out whether they like it or not. My mum insisted on having my location. I told her no, and she got incredibly mad and started gaslighting me, accusing me of things, yelling at me, and storming off. To be completely honest, I am lying about my location about 80% of the time, but she doesn't need to know that. I would just prefer that she doesn't have my location. She is a control freak and she's just annoyed that she can't have my location and that she no longer has access to my bank account transactions. She gaslit me so hard that I ended up crying and yelling, and despite all this, I still won't let her have my location. I just want to add that she's not a bad parent. She does care about me a lot and is always there for me. She just has some really bad qualities and I'm conflicted. Despite everything, she still hasn't let what I said slide. She threatened to take away my car keys, knowing that the car isn't in my name, so I can't really do anything about it. We kind of came to a compromise and I apologized just to alleviate the situation, but my brother told her that I wanted to move out after I graduate. Now she's even more upset, hitting things and yelling at me. She keeps saying things to me like, girls don't move out alone in our culture, they stay with the family. Honestly, I'm thinking of just grabbing some things and going to my boyfriend's house. Am I in the wrong here for speaking up for myself? My mother is mad at me for saying that my uncle has to take care of his son and I don't know what to do. It's been the topic of the past few months. My uncle from my mother's side of the family is having to take care of his son because the boy's mother is selling things that aren't approved by the law, if you know what I mean. My mother and her sister have been talking about it all the time. And honestly, I can't see the absurdity of my uncle taking care of his own son. Today I was playing games with my mother and she started talking about it once again. and I told her that I didn't want to keep hearing about it. Everything was okay after that, but when we were done playing, I realized that what I said sounded rude, especially in my native language, and I went to apologize. I explained to her that I was just fed up with the topic because I don't see anything shocking in my cousin living with my uncle. It's simply a father living with and taking care of his son. I added that I've been getting a little irritated with the way my uncle's business is always a reason for stress in all of the family members' houses. Like for example, when my mother and aunt were desperate to find a way to get my uncle's medicine without a prescription because he didn't want to go to the doctor to get a new prescription. Then it became their responsibility to get his medicine that he knew he needed because he didn't care enough to go and get a new prescription one way or another. My uncle is 40 years old. I don't get why there's always such a fuss over anything that he needs to be responsible for. It's almost like he's an 11-year-old boy who doesn't have any adults to look after him. He is a man who's been married before, has a job, drinks and smokes, travels alone, buys his own things, and I don't see why talking about that makes her so angry. After all of that, she got angry and started acting cold towards me. I went to try and chat normally with her a few times along the day, and she wouldn't even look me in the face, so I gave up. Honestly, I don't know what to do now. After the last time I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more wary that if she did try, it'd end very badly for her. So she mostly just yelled at me and didn't lay a finger on me again until the events of wanting my house some years later. I thought nothing of it and just continued with my usual routine of school and odd jobs. My 15th birthday was right around the corner, and my dad presented me with an engine kit for my bike to help me get around town in. He said that I would be better off saving for a car than a scooter and that this would do in the meantime. I ended up agreeing with his logic and kept saving for a car. A few days later though, I found a pamphlet for a military school while sweeping grass off the back patio and mowing the lawn. It was on the ground and under a chair near where my mum liked to sit and drink wine. I had a bad feeling that she was cooking up some kind of crazy scheme, so I waited until my dad got home to show him what I'd found. He was pretty mad but didn't jump to conclusions. So he went to see my mum with a pamphlet and asked her about it and said, "Honey, what is this?" And my mum goes white at the sight of the pamphlet and says, "It's nothing. I've never seen it before." My dad says, "Really? Because if you were planning on trying to send Craggle to military school, you know I wouldn't allow it." That's when my mum broke her facade and yelled, "He needs to learn some discipline. He locks his door all the time and I can't even spank him anymore because he's too big. This is the only way I have left to punish him for being a disobedient brat." My dad responds by saying, "Craggle did nothing wrong when he stood up to you because of your favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat because of you and the way you spoil her and let her get away with stealing things from her brother. As far as I'm concerned, this discussion about sending Craggle to military school is over. And if you try to send him, then so help me, I'll bring the hammer down in any way I can." My mum responded saying, "Well, I guess this whole family is just going to take away what little power I have left in this house then. If I have nothing, I may as well be nothing." So my dad says, "Stop being so dramatic that Craggle is growing up to be his own man now with his own money." My mum then just stormed out of the room. The next morning before school, I saw her furiously trying to stuff something into the kitchen trash bin. I waited for her to leave for work and dug out what she was trying to hide. It was an application for military school entirely filled out in her handwriting. It required the signatures of both parents or legal guardians on it, and there were 2 signatures on the paper. I recognized my mum's, but the other looked like a pitiful attempt at trying to replicate my dad's. He prided himself on his smooth and complex signature, and there's no way that my mum could copy it without looking like a fraud. I guess she realized that after she was confronted and gave up on trying to send me away. I kept the papers and showed them to my dad later. He was mad, but figured she'd done that already and let it go. But he filed the papers in his office just in case. A few months later, it got out that my mum was having an affair with an old ex-boyfriend of hers from high school. This was the last straw for my dad and he filed for divorce. I went to live with him months later after he bought another house. He sped up the divorce pretty quickly by pulling out the military school papers that my mum had forged his signature on, and it wasn't just that. He also had evidence that she forged his signature on at least 1 credit card application and one other thing that I don't recall. That made my mum fear being arrested for fraud, and they went through court pretty fast because she agreed to most of his terms. Mum got the house though because dad didn't want it, but she also demanded alimony and child support because my sister unsurprisingly chose to stay living with her. The judge awarded my mum the child support and a minimum amount of alimony for a decade of monthly payments. The alimony just basically covered my sister's allowance anyway. Mum was pretty mad about that and threatened to take him back to court, but he held all those forged signatures over her head for years to make her back down. On the day I left to live in my dad's new house, my sister stuck her tongue out at me and smugly said, Mummy told her that she was a princess and the more deserving sibling, and that she was the reason why I was leaving the house. I just shook my head and told her to think what she wants because I didn't care anymore. Then walked out the front door, finally feeling as free as a bird. My relationship with my sister when she came to visit Dad's house once a week only got worse after that, until finally we stopped talking altogether for years. I didn't really care to visit my mum's house after I moved out, and she'd pretty much gutted my old room for a home office anyway. So this story requires a lot of background to be understood, so please bear with me. Recently, my mother-in-law passed away. My wife's sister Lucy, who's in her 40s, has a mental handicap where she has the mentality and maturity of about a 9-year-old. She's lived with her mother her entire life and was understandably devastated by the loss. Because of her handicap, Lucy receives a social security disability check every month from the government in the amount of about $800. She and my mother-in-law had been renting an apartment using both of their incomes. However, with the loss of my mother-in-law's income, Lucy could no longer afford the apartment on her own. My mother-in-law and Lucy have a small dog, a Chihuahua named Maria that they have had since it was born. Maria is now 12 years old and Lucy loves this little dog, and it really is the only thing she has left of her mother. My mother-in-law had taken care of Lucy for her whole life, to the point where Lucy never had to cook, clean, go grocery shopping, pay bills, make a budget, or do anything for herself. My mother-in-law's passing was not a surprise. She'd been sick for a while, so therefore, for the past year or so, Lucy had been receiving services from a state-sponsored program to help her learn life skills such as cooking and cleaning. This program also offers housing assistance, but it wasn't needed before this time. How the housing assistance works is that the GP buys or rents housing and then places clients in the house, charging the clients significantly reduced rent, with the state welfare program making up the difference. After my mother-in-law's death, my wife became Lucy's power of attorney, allowing her to make financial and medical decisions for Lucy. My wife was able to get Lucy set up in GP housing at a cost to Lucy of $500 per month. This included all utilities, leaving Lucy $300 per month for internet, food, and anything else she needed. It's not ideal, but it's doable. However, she would be unable to keep the dog. The reason for this is the entitled mum who we'll call Karen, because of course. Also living in the same GP housing as Lucy is Dottie. She's a female in her 20s. Dottie is also handicapped and she's non-verbal and walks with a walker. However, she seems very sweet, unlike her mother Karen. Dottie requires 24/7 support from caregivers, and Lucy also has caregivers coming on weekdays during the day to help her out. Maria ended up staying with one of her caregivers, Sophie, until a situation could be arranged where she and Lucy could live together. Okay, that's enough background, let's get to the entitlement. When my wife met with a GP representative and Karen to discuss Lucy moving into the house, Karen told everyone that dogs were not allowed because the landlord forbid it. The landlord she was referring to was not the GP, but the owner of the house that the GP was renting from. My wife asked if she could discuss this with the landlord directly, and Karen said, "No, I'm representing the landlord, so you'll just have to trust me." And yet, it gets worse. Even though Lucy is technically renting from the GP, Karen insisted that my wife sign a sublease stating that we were renting from Karen. The representative from the GP said to go ahead and sign it and that it would be fine. My guess is that since Karen is paying the GP, the document would be unenforceable and the GP rep just didn't want to deal with fighting Karen. And so, my wife signed it. Karen also wanted Lucy to pay the $500 monthly to her and she would give it to the GP. My wife, however, stood her ground on that one. There was no way that we were trusting this person with Lucy's money, and after much arguing, Karen finally agreed to let us pay the rent directly to the GP. Then the discussion went back to the dog. My wife asked if there was any way that Maria could live with Lucy. Karen said, "Of course not. My husband is allergic to dogs." So my wife said, "So that means if your husband came to see Dottie, he'd have a problem, right?" Karen replied, "No, my husband never comes to the house, but I do all the time, and I can't be bringing dog dander back home." Later, when my wife and I were at the house to sign the sublease, Karen mentioned that she just had to leave to pick up her other daughter's dog. What? Karen also tried to get security cameras installed in the house. They would cover the living room, the kitchen, and the dining room. Basically, all of the common areas. Because Dottie was non-verbal and couldn't tell Karen what was happening with her, she wanted to be able to observe what was going on in the house at any time. Nobody was okay with this, not Lucy, not my wife, not the caregivers, and not the GP representative. Some of Dottie's caregivers told us that Karen had asked for this on multiple occasions and she didn't like being told no. So, Lucy moved in without the dog. Sophie would drive her over to her house nearly every day to spend time with Maria. Every time Karen came to the house when Lucy was there, she told Lucy that she should just forget about the dog because she is never going to have Maria with her again. Everything having to do with Karen was starting to look a little fishy. So using the public records search, I was able to determine that the owner of the house was an 80-year-old woman who inherited the house from her parents when they died. Using the same search, I was able to learn that Karen owned 3 different properties that she rented out. I kind of got the impression that Karen was somehow trying to get the house from the owner, but we never figured out what the dynamic was all about. After living there for 3 months, my wife received a letter from the owner of the house. It was an eviction notice. Apparently, the owner had decided to sell the house and Lucy had 30 days to move out. The letter also stated that Karen has decided not to renew the lease. My wife called Karen and as it turns out, Karen got a similar letter from the owner stating that Lucy had decided not to renew the lease. I couldn't help but laugh. It seems that whatever Karen was trying to pull over the owner got the last laugh. A few weeks later, Lucy moved into another GP house. This one was a bit more expensive, $600 per month, but it included internet which Lucy no longer has to pay for, so it's pretty much a wash. Also, another resident in the house has a dog, so after making sure that Maria and the other dog got along, Lucy has her dog back.